having gone through that experience and having had to fight through it the hard way, I never gave anybody in the entrepreneurial world a chance to really treat me any different when I walked into a boardroom. And then I learned that, yes, as a woman, you have to work twice as hard as a man in order to be taken seriously. For us as celebrities, who we marry, what we wear, whether we put on weight, whether our children are, the, A-list children that should have been born to us or not. And, it's sometimes it gets fairly ridiculous, honestly. So I think that's what's really missing in our industry today, that the men are just still so hung up on what their star value is, rather than the confidence that they have in themselves to being, the actors that they are, that we haven't gone beyond that yet, where I think the women have, for that matter of fact. Today, you've got incredible, wonderful young female actors who are producers, who are extremely successful. You've got Anushka, you've got Alia, you've got Deepika, all doing films. And in a way, I would like to think that we made it slightly easier for them.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rudrani and welcome to Speak Easy. My guest today is extremely inspiring. She's had her own journey. She started at her own terms and she continues that journey at her own terms. She's strong. She's amazing. I'm talking about the beautiful Lara Dutta. Welcome to the show, Lara.
Thanks, Rudani. Thank you for having me. That was quite the introduction.
In the beginning, when you joined, it wasn't the same way things are today, was it, Lara?
No, but I also entered the industry really, really young, Rudani. I mean, I was 16 years old when I started my modeling career, in the mid-1990s. So I'm an old hat. I've been here for 27 years. When I say that, I feel, my God, how old am I? But the fact of the matter is that I started really young, So I would say that I've been through some really interesting times through the entire fashion film industry. I've seen so many different changes take place. I've been part and parcel of all of that. I've evolved through those changes. And I think to remain relevant, in my 40s, to still be working, possibly being the busiest that I have been in the last decade, doing some of my best work. I think I'm really, really fortunate and blessed to have had the career that I've had so far.
In the beginning, there were not such roles being written for women in Bollywood where they could show all aspects, be multidimensional. Even though the initial launch push of you coming and working so hard and being Miss Universe was there, but you still remain an outsider. You didn't have people here pushing for you. So I feel that part has obviously been something that you now get to do roles that people get to see different aspects of you. Tell me your thoughts on this analysis.
I think I came into the industry where the industry was still run by this very formula, sort of way to make films. So it was a big hero, then you cast, this very stereotypical villain across, opposite the hero. And then, of course, you had, a young actress who was either playing the love interest, the girlfriend or the wife, or, and they were very formula-driven films. So there was very little in terms of being able to perform within those formula films. So yes, I did do a lot of, purely commercial films through my career. But very rarely did the women have an opportunity to kind of, really perform or flex any kind of acting skills. I still remember that I would go in for narrations and the narration used to be, "Acha, is film mein na aapke 4 gaane hain aur 5 bahut hi badhiya scene hai." And I was like, okay. और इसमें ना आप वेस्टर्न कपड़े पहनेंगे और हम बहुत ही स्टाइलाइज करेंगे, मनीष मल्होत्रा जी स्टाइलिस्ट रहेंगे, so you were kind of made to believe that yes, you would be presented, fabulously well. You'd be presented like an A-list heroine. You would dance around to 4 songs on which you'd later do shows and make your money on, but you'd get paid peanuts for the film, and that would pretty much be the end all and be all of your role. So I think, like I said, that I went through various different phases of the industry. When I came in, you still had the good old school secretary, who used to go out there and find you work. Then of course the agencies came in and the agencies took over. And today you have international agencies that are representing Indian artists here and overseas. So there's a lot that's changed. But I think with the advent of, OTT platforms within the country, the entire landscape of content that was being made completely changed, because finally people got an opportunity where every single cohort, every part of the audience was addressed. You weren't catering just to the masses, or you weren't making just an arty film. You were making content across the board, different genres, and allowed people to pick and choose what it is that they wanted to watch. So I think for me, being an actor that made that jump pretty early on, with the advent of OTT, I was one of the first purely commercial actors to make that crossover. Sort of was liberating for me, to say the least. Because it really cut loose all that angst that you carried as a performer, as an actor, being limited by it just by being a woman. It kind of just liberated you from that. And like you rightly said, so today, the kind of roles that I'm actually playing my age on screen, which is amazing, because you have this cohort of women between the ages of 35 to 55 that were just not addressed, because you either were, the pativrata bahu at home, or you were the mean sass, or you were the all-sacrificing mother, and those were the ideals that women were supposed to live up to. So women between the ages of 30 and 55 thought that they had to fit into one of those roles, otherwise they were not normal women, because that's what the Indian woman did. So I love the fact that today we're playing characters on screen that are diabolical, that are ambitious, that are flawed, that are having affairs, that are that have murderous intent. Because at the end of the day, at some point of time, those are everything within us women, and that comes up. So I love the fact today that the characters being played out on screen are so much more relatable and so much more real than anything that was on offer earlier.
And also, I feel that, even look at the roles that you picked for OTT shows, they're all contrastingly different. It's almost like, give me anything, I can play anything, which is what women, when you started at that time, never got the opportunity to do. Kaun Banegi Shekhawat is so different from Hiccups and Hookups. Again, both very interesting women. Seen the show will know your central character also faces a lot of slut shaming because of the choices that she makes, because she finally, as a single mother, chooses to live her life and have desires and go out there and put herself out there. You have also faced slut shaming. I think a lot of women have, and particularly being an actor. And I want to know what went through your mind, because anything you did, whether getting married to Mahesh or whether making personal choices, wearing clothes at your time, everything was scrutinized, and I feel it was extremely sexist and unfair of what you went through. But what do you tell me your thoughts on that?
So Rajani, I think one of my all-time favorite characters that I've portrayed on screen is Vasudha Rao from Hiccups and Hookups. The reason that I love her is because, a lot of times people look at me and I have a certain persona and I have a certain image, and 90% of the scripts that come to me, the character sketch, the very first line is, she's a good-looking, confident, woman who has the answers to everything. She's, got it all together. She's a force to reckon with. And all that's very well. But I love the fact that I'm allowed to play Vasudha on screen, and Vasudha is in her 40s, clueless, terrified, vulnerable, and doesn't have all the answers at all to life. And I love the fact, and flawed. And I love that I can play her on screen, because it's not necessary that when you're in your 40s, that you've got to have your entire life mapped out and you've got to have the answers to everything. It's not necessary that you have to have everything tied up in a pretty little parcel with a bow on it, where you've ticked marriage, you've ticked kids, you're the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter-in-law. You know where you're heading. You know that, okay, 10 years from now, I'm going to be in my 50s. My kid is going to be off at college. I'm going to be doing Kochi classes and meditating. And, this is a completely bullshit, idealistic world that, we feed ourselves. And the fact that, now that I'm, in my 40s, or I'm entering into my 50s, I can't have any kind of desires. I can't be a sexual person. These are things you don't talk about. These are things. So the idea of normalizing those conversations, of having them in a way where including with your family members. For me, it's with my daughter, who's 18 years old in the show. But just to make those conversations normal, to make them where you can have them within the safe circle of your family, where you can talk about things, and feel like a woman, rather than having to feel constantly just like a mother, or just like a wife, or just like a daughter to your parents and stuff like that. So I love the fact that Vasudha's had that. And sure, like with the character, through life, I mean, you kind of constantly put into different situations where people will always weigh in on your choices. People will always weigh in on well, for us as celebrities, who we marry, what we wear, whether we put on weight, whether our children are, the, A-list children that should have been born to us or not. And, I mean, it's sometimes it gets fairly ridiculous, honestly. But I guess, you learn to take everything with not just a pinch, but a sack full of salt. And for me, I've, ensured that I've surrounded myself with a very small cohort of people that are extremely grounding for me. And, you don't let these things get to you, and you just get on with your life. They're your choices. And I always look at it this way. I always say, when someone passes a comment about you or regarding you, they've literally given you 30 seconds of thought. And after that, they've moved on to the next thing. And they've got so much going on in their own lives that you don't even figure in their minds at all after that 30 seconds of whatever they've given you. But you allow that to play out for years sometimes in your own life. 30 seconds of someone else's thought. So if you put things in perspective like that, you literally breeze through life.
I also feel this is the mantra to be at peace for a lot of women who are listening in. Like I said in the beginning, you're inspiring in many ways, Lara. Of course, the fact that winning the pageant, you went out and you coached, and you continue to do that, and to create more confident women and ask them to believe in themselves, which takes me back to also, you've always, lifted the women around you. And I think the industry has, in the past, even sometimes now, including the media, enjoyed in sort of breaking women and pitching them against each other. But you've been someone, and you and Shmita, all of you all have really held your ground. Tell me if that was difficult.
I think in the past, Rosani, we went through a phase where opportunities for women were so far and few that unfortunately women got used to clawing each other out of their way to get to those opportunities, because there was just that much. Yeah. So you got so used to elbowing people out of your way to try and make place to go and grab hold of that. What I've learned through experience, and I've seen it work, is that at the end of the day, women create, when we come forward, when we break barriers, when we open up further opportunities, when you create more opportunities for women, it just, as you get stronger as a woman, as you step up to claim what you want to, and as you create more opportunities for women, the playing field evens. You don't have to get to that cutthroat level and that cutthroat business of, literally pushing somebody out of the way. When you lift women up with you, you just end up creating more opportunities for us to, to come forward, to shine, to do things. I mean, today in the industry, when I came in, there were hardly any women. I mean, I've been on a show now that was directed by a female director, that had a woman DOP on it. The heads of most departments were women. I mean, and it's incredible. The writers are women today, and so it's, I mean, we've come a long way, but we fought for it. It was hard fought and hard won. These victories didn't come easy. And I give credit to the women that came before me as well, because even today, when I'm looking at women like Ratna Pathak Shah, when I'm looking at women like Neena Gupta on screen, I'm saying, oh my God, I want to be as ballsy as them, when I'm in my 60s, when I'm there at that. And it gives me the hope that there's going to be incredible work for me to do, when I get to that age, because of what they're building today, the paths that they're creating, the characters that they're bringing to life. So, and it's the least that you can do for the generation that comes after you, right? You leave it a better place than what it was like when you came to it.
Absolutely. What are a few learnings that you've sort of on the way picked up, and things that you hope eventually change?
So I think for me, being a services kid, the one thing that I've always sort of done is I've constantly transitioned. And I think today, if somebody asks me what is one of my greatest pluses or my greatest assets, is the fact that I am constantly in a process of transitioning. So I've never really, even when I was Miss Universe, I never halted and stopped in the year 2000 saying, okay, that's the be all and end all of what I can be. So I'm only going to be, a beauty queen. When I joined the film industry, I never really thought, well, in many ways, I was an outsider. And I was pretty clear that the film world wasn't going to be all that I was, because I knew that I was a lot beyond just doing that. In the years that I've been here, I've transitioned from doing that to being an entrepreneur now, running a pretty fairly successful business of my own, brands that are going across different verticals. So if you ask me, the one greatest learning that I've had in life is to not box myself or label myself as into any one thing. And you're never too old. And I'm standing testimony to that you're never really too old to reinvent, to learn, to recreate. And it's amazing that I think women, especially, we have the kind of resilience within us where if a switch suddenly goes off, and you make that decision and that turning point happens and just the turnover happens, you can achieve anything that you really put your mind to. But we have so much fear inside us. And I see that women have it more than men. We think that we have a lot more, we stand to lose a lot more in taking that next step forward. But I find that a lot of these fears are really, just created in our own minds, that they don't really exist. So when you are able to push past that, you end up opening new doors for yourself that you never really knew that existed. So you've got to go beyond your comfort zone. You've got to leave that behind a little bit in order to conquer new frontiers.
It's nice when you call yourself an entrepreneur, but I know that it comes with a lot of risks and a lot of pain as well. So I want to know, a lot of women have also spoken about how it's you sometimes are looked over when you're trying to make opportunities for yourself and not taken seriously because of your gender. Tell me if you've ever faced that, if you have, and how have you maneuvered your way in your ventures in awkward situations?
So yes, I definitely did face that. In 2011, when I turned producer with my film Chalo Dilli, I was one of the first few female actors to actually turn producer. And, I'd been working in the industry already for a really long time before that. And everybody was used to dealing with me as an actress. And a lot of the producers that I worked with, a lot of the distributors that I worked with, they were more than happy to talk to me on the creative side of things, but they were constantly looking over my shoulder to see whether there was a man sitting, who's going to be talking about the business end of things. And I was like, I'm sorry, that conversation is still going to have to happen, between the two of us. And I found that it made men very uncomfortable. It made them very uncomfortable to have that conversation with a woman. And it's quite possibly because they didn't think that, you might be well versed enough, or you didn't know the ropes, or that you weren't qualified enough to have those kind of conversations. And so it was difficult to begin with. And I think I remember coming back and, speaking to Mahesh about it and being really frustrated about it, because I've grown up in a family of all girls, and in a military family where there was no distinction whatsoever made between boys and girls. My sister herself, was one of the first helicopter pilots, in India, in the Indian Air Force. So we never had that kind of distinction. So it was the first time that I actually really faced it, and it bothered me terribly. So, which is why when I turned entrepreneur, I think having gone through that experience and having had to fight through it the hard way, I never gave anybody in the entrepreneurial world a chance to really treat me any different when I walked into a boardroom. And then I learned that, yes, as a woman, you have to work twice as hard as a man in order to be taken seriously. But you don't have to do it with a chip on your shoulder. You don't have to come in there with, where you've got something to prove. You don't have anything to prove. But you just, unfortunately, in order for a man to take you more seriously in a man's world, you've got to work just twice as hard as them. But I found that, to be honest, in the business world, that I didn't face that much of prejudice as much as I did in the industry, in the film industry. But again, we've come a long way. Today, you've got incredible, wonderful young female actors who are producers, who are extremely successful. You've got Anushka, you've got Alia, you've got Deepika, all doing films. And in a way, I would like to think that we made it slightly easier for them to come in and, and do what they're doing.
You paved the path.
In a small way, yeah.
Of course you did. What are the kind of films you'd like to produce today?
So I've always been very clear as a producer and as to why I turned producer. So, I'm not the kind of producer who will produce films that are 150 and 200 crores and are these, big, massively mounted films. I'm not that kind of producer. What I want to do is produce films that are small to mid-budget, medium-budget films, but that are high on content. So for me, the writing is the star of the film. So even with Chalo Dilli, it was a very small film, but it was all heart and it was received really well. And those are the kind of films that I want to do. That where the writing is king. So the content is what really matters. And of course, no producer wants to lose money. But today you're in a great space where you're not just making films for the big screen, but you're also making films for the digital, for the digital screen. And over there, you have far more versatility and flexibility to make the kind of films that you really want to. So yeah, I still will I'm not making arty films. I still will make films that will have a commercial appeal, that will just be, slightly different from your formula films.
How for years and years, you do small but vital roles in films, which are predominantly male.
Yeah.
And, a lot of actors have done that for years. But there's a little bit of a struggle when you want a little bit clout for your film and you want like a male superstar or a male star to come in and play small but vital roles, but it's being led predominantly by the female actor. And so, you want that because, the film gets a little bit more attention, it gets that push and all of that.
Sure.
I want to know if that was a struggle for you, because Tapsi really, really feels this, and the fact that budgets for female-led films still are minuscule, and it's a problem. So what are your thoughts on this as well?
No, I definitely think, look, today, let's be honest and, put things into perspective. Yes, times are changing and they're evolving. And you've had Alia, I think, who's had the maximum amount of success when it comes to, what box office collections have been for a female-led film. And please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just talking about in the near past. That's, when with Razi, with Gangubai, with all of these films that she's done. And, but in comparison, at the same time, for the box office collections, say for a equally big, male-driven, successful film at the box office, there's a big discrepancy. There is a big discrepancy. So, we have to be honest, and you can fight, yes, and we have, there's been a long, drawn out, sort of fight that's happened in the industry for pay disparity, against pay disparity, and, making sure that female actors are paid better than less than 1/10 of what the hero takes home, but it's an ongoing fight. But so you've got to be sensible about the kind of films that you're making, but that doesn't mean that you stop making them or you go into this funk of saying, it's difficult. Yes, of course it's difficult. And anywhere in the world, it's the same, but I love the fact that I think what we don't have in our industry yet is the maturity from the male actors, where there is a confidence in who they are rather than what their star value is. Yeah. In the West, you have incredible actors like Tom Cruise and Matt Damon and Ben Affleck who will come in and do 1 or 2 scenes in a film. Brad Pitt, they'll come in and do 1 or 2 scenes in somebody else's film. And they'll do a brilliant job and they'll play these crazy characters and they'll have a blast with it. And then they're out of there, but they're not thinking about, oh my God, but it's his film. What am I? It's going to lower my star value. So I think that's what's really missing in our industry today, that the men are just still so hung up on what their star value is rather than the confidence that they have in themselves to being, the actors that they are, that we haven't gone beyond that yet, where I think the women have, for that matter of fact. The women, I mean, I was very happy to come in and to have the opportunity of playing Indira Gandhi in a film that was completely Akshay's film. But the fact of the matter is, you're playing a character that's an iconic character. How many times in my life will I get the opportunity to portray Indira Gandhi on screen? Possibly never, again, maybe.
Also very convincingly, and what a transformation it was. Can I just add that, please?
Yeah, but it was fun to do, right? Those are the things that you kind of live for as an actor. It doesn't matter whether that role was 10 minutes long. Yeah. Was I there in the first half and the second half? Did I have a song? Those things didn't matter.
Absolutely wonderful chatting with you, Lara. Thank you so much. Very, very proud of you, and I'm looking forward to your next crazy role. And this run has just started. I'm sure it's, like you said, I'm looking forward to that crazy role when you once turn 60. I'll be rooting for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sending you lots of love.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.